If you have ever decided to look for table tennis equipment, you will have realized that there are way too many options for anyone to humanly go through all of them. First of all, there are a myriad of companies from STIGA, Butterfly, and many more to pick from. Then, from these companies, you have to pick a blade. What grip handle do you pick? What type of wood do you pick? Does a more expensive blade really make a difference? What about carbon blades? How heavy of a blade should you use? Then, after you pick your blade, you need to choose one of your rubbers. Should you stick with the ever-popular inverted rubber, or should you buy short pips, long pips, or anti-rubber? How thick should your rubber be? How hard should your rubber be? Should your rubber be a European-style rubber or a Chinese-style rubber? I personally ran into this crisis. Ideally, you would be able to try out every single company, every single rubber, and every single blade, and every single combination of these rubbers and blades. But for obvious reasons, this is impossible, if not extremely expensive. Many of us only have so much money that we can spend on one paddle, and it can be really hard to know what is perfect for you. As a result, I've decided to research on almost every rubber, blade, and combination of equipment I could get my hands on to save you time and provide you with an informed decision. This video took me a long time to make, so smash that like button and subscribe if you find this video helpful. The first thing I have to mention is about your budget. For the majority of people buying a paddle, budget is one of the biggest factors, if not the biggest factor in buying a paddle. You can spend $10 on a paddle at a sporting goods store, or over $500 on a custom one. So how much money should you spend? The important thing to keep in mind is that you may often not need that $500 paddle with that Olympic level equipment. In fact, buying the best paddle your money can buy may actually make you play worse, which is actually quite counterintuitive. This is because at a certain level, table tennis is more about what your skill and playing style is. And, more importantly, how your equipment complements your playing style, rather than how expensive it is. Yes, buying a $10 sandpaper paddle will be near impossible to play on, but the same goes for trying to buy Ma Long's paddle if you're a defensive player. For professional paddles, they often offer a higher level of power and speed, but lack in control. This means that beginners will often start developing bad habits by using high-level equipment. Instead of getting proper form and proper topspin out of their loops, they're just focused on smashing the ball as hard as they can, creating bad form and plateauing the amount of skill they can gain. So before we go into the specific brands and specific products that I would recommend depending on your playing style, it is important to know the overarching archetypes to pick from. There are different types of blades and rubbers, and it is important to know which one is the best pick for you. Firstly, we will talk about the different types of blades. The blade, for the viewers who do not know what a blade is the wooden part that the two rubbers are attached to. There are three main overarching archetypes of table tennis blades. These are the defensive, all-around, and offensive blades. But what do these three types really mean? Defensive paddles tend to be bigger and have softer woods for slower rebounds. What they lack in power, they have in control. These paddles also tend to be bigger and heavier than their other counterparts due to their larger hitting area. If you are unsure if you should get a defensive blade or not, it normally means that you should not get a defensive blade. Defensive blades are purely designed for defensive players, so the only people who purchase these blades are people who already know that they need the blade. However, if you know that you are going to be a chopper, this blade should be a pretty good option to slow down the game. So essentially, if you were thinking about getting a defensive blade, it pretty much means that you're already good enough to already know exactly what equipment you want. You shouldn't be debating if you want a defensive blade or not, because if you're at that level, go get a defensive blade if you're a chopper. But if you're still new or a beginner and you're starting out, I would recommend the next blade in the list. The next blade in the list are all-around blades. All-around blades are the middle ground between an offensive and a defensive blade. They come in the same size as most offensive paddles, so they won't be weighed down by the extra wood. However, they are made with softer and often lighter wood than offensive blades, meaning that they will rebound the ball at a slower speed. Of course, they will still rebound the ball faster than defensive blades. However, since the ball bounces off the paddle slower, it means the player will have much more control over where the ball goes. Since beginners are still developing their playstyle and techniques, I would recommend these players start off with an all-around blade, which will help their form. The STIGA Classic all-around blade has been one of the best-selling blades of all time, for a good reason. It is a great middle ground for getting enough power, more power than any pre-made bat that you can buy, but still offer enough control so you can earn proper form. Offensive blades are made out of harder wood, meaning that they will generate more speed when the ball bounces off of them. However, for people starting off in table tennis, this can actually be bad, as they use their paddles as a crutch, developing bad habits. Of course, for intermediate and professional players, these are the most commonly bought blades on the market today, as most players will develop an aggressive attack play style, focusing on forehand or backhand topspin. Within the offensive blade category, there are blades called carbon blades. These blades are not fully made out of carbon, a mistake that some people make, because that would make the blades illegal. Despite the fact that the blade shape is actually not regulated by the ITDF, take a look at STIGA's new cyber shape. Some people love this shape, some people hate it. The material and thickness of the blade are, which regulates that the majority of the blade must be made out of natural wood. As such, carbon blades come with 2 layers of carbon, one on each side. Some custom carbon blades, on the other hand, may just have carbon on one side of the blade and wood on the other side. Most often, people will use the wood side on their backhand. Carbon layers are stiffer than wood, meaning that the ball will bounce off the blade even faster. However, many professional players still prefer the feel of wooden blades, such as Xu Xing, who has used the STIGA Dynasty full wooden blade for many years. After picking out what style of blade you want, you should pick what type of blade handle you want. There are currently 5 main archetypes of blade handles. These are Chinese penhold, Japanese penhold, straight, flared, and anatomic. Chinese penhold handles are shorter, as the Chinese penhold style does not require as much space on the blade to use. This blade option should also not be too hard to pick, since if you play Chinese penhold, get a Chinese penhold blade style. If you don't play Chinese penhold, pick one of the other options. The Japanese penhold styles follows a similar suit. These paddles often have a vertical piece of wood as well, as their paddles are shaped more as a square rather than a rounder shape. Again, it won't be a hard choice if you want this option or not. It really just depends on how you hold the paddle. Now, let's get into the 3 main handle variations for shakehand players. The 3 main variations for shakehand players are flared, straight, and anatomic. Flared handles seem to be the most common type of blade on the market today. These blades start off narrow at the top and flare to a larger base, hence the name flared handle. These allow for a more secure grip when attacking, as the hand naturally gets closer to the blade when swung. However, depending on your hand size, some flared blades may have too small of a handle and can cause an uncomfortable grip. For example, I personally found the STIGA All-Around Classic flared handle to be way too narrow for my liking. In fact, I actually got calluses once from playing with this blade. Straight handles are, well, straight. Although they do not offer as strong of a grip when attacking, they often fit a wider variety of hands better as they are uniformly shaped. The main advantage of straight handles is that they allow the paddle to be more easily twiddled in the hand. For players who use different types of rubbers on each side of their paddle, they will often need to switch what side they are using depending on how the ball is received. As such, a straight handle will make it easier to flip the paddle. Anatomic handles are one of the rarest types of paddles out there, and they behave very similarly to straight handles. Some people may just find them more comfortable depending on their hand size and playing style. Anatomic handles tend to have a little bulge near the top of the handle to fit, well, your hand. Professionals are able to order custom paddle handle shapes, meaning that they can get the exact handle for their hand size. For everyone else, if you find a handle uncomfortable, it often means you just have to end up buying a different blade, as different companies and blades use different shapes. Another option is to either use grip tape, which is what I personally do, or use wood filler to fill in the shape of your hand. Now, that is the basic overview of the main archetypes for blades. We will go over the 4 main archetypes of rubber. These are inverted rubber, short pip rubber, long pip rubber, and anti-spin rubber. Inverted rubber is the most common type of rubber, as over 80% of players use this rubber. Inverted rubber is also known as pips in rubber, as the pips are sandwiched against the sponge. These rubbers come in different thicknesses, tackiness, and attributes. A thicker sponge allows for more time of the ball on the paddle, acting somewhat of a spring. As such, a thinner sponge will have the opposite effect. A thicker sponge allows for more spin on the ball as it grips it more. Although, this means that it will be more susceptible to the opponent's spin as well. Short pip rubber is when the pips of the rubber are facing outward. These types of rubber are less susceptible to the opponent's spin, but also are not able to generate as much spin themselves. Short pip rubber often gets a bad name, as the cheapest recreational paddles often use short pips, but do not confuse these short pip rubbers with the actual short pip rubbers used in tournaments. These recreational short pip rubbers often have no grip or feel at all, meaning that it is virtually like playing with the blade itself, just a piece of wood. Overall though, short pip rubber players often hit the ball at the top of the arc of the ball, hitting it flat and hitting through the opponent's spin. On the other hand, the more normal inverted players tend to brush the top of the ball to create topspin so they can arc the ball, meaning even if the ball is underneath the height of the table, the arc can still bring it above the net, making shots appear very low. Short pip players are able to just hit through the spin due to their lack of spin on their rubber. This means that short pip rubber players are often much closer to the table, as when they are far away from the table, it's very hard for them to win the point. Long pip rubber is also when the pips of the rubber are facing outwards and are sometimes known as long grass rubber. This is because they are very similar to long grass in the wind, bending towards the force of the ball. As such, long pip rubber has the feature of reversing the spin of the ball, so you can use your opponent's spin against them. This also means though that this rubber is not effective for generating topspin against an opponent's topspin, because your opponent's topspin would become your backspin due to the reversing spin of the rubber. This means though that long pip rubbers are really good for chopping, as it can be used to slow down the game. Every topspin attack that they give you can be used to generate more backspin for you. Anti-spin rubber has similar properties to short pip rubbers, nullifying the opponent's spin. However, anti-spin rubber often stops the spin more than short pip rubber, as it is also known as junk rubber. If you happen to have a really old piece of rubber, it often acquires a very similar properties to anti-spin rubber, as it has lost all of its grip and feel. Personally, I haven't used anti-spin rubber before, as it is not a common archetype to play, but it can be useful if you're struggling against other opponents' spin. Now we're going to go into the most common types of rubbers, inverted rubbers. As inverted rubber allows for a modern aggressive playstyle, almost every player uses at least one inverted rubber on their paddles. Most players use inverted rubbers on both sides of their paddles, but some players use short pips, long pips, or anti-rubber on the other side for more strategic gameplay. Short pip players often stay close to the table as they cannot generate the spin to arc the ball. Long pip players are defensive choppers to slow down gameplay, and anti-spin rubber players often utilize both sides of their paddles to block spin and attack shots, then attack on their own when the timing is right, very similar to short pip players. A little side note, I tried using short pips and long pips rubbers on a paddle once, but it failed miserably. It's almost impossible to make a topspin attack without an inverted rubber. So unless you want to have a very odd playing style, make sure at least one of the sides of your paddles has the inverted rubber on it. So that is an overview of all of the main archetypes of table tennis blades and rubbers. Keep in mind that blades and rubbers in the same archetype can still have wildly different feels. Within each archetype, each rubber and blade can have different stickiness, hardness, and more. For example, some inverted rubber is meant for control play, while other inverted rubber gives you a very strong offensive feel, especially the harder rubbers. Thank you guys so much for watching my video, and I hope you guys found it helpful. If any of you guys have questions, be sure to leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Or feel free to put in your own 2 cents and answer someone else's question. If you guys want a comprehensive review on the top brands and products to buy with my personal recommendations for beginner, intermediate, or advanced paddle, leave a comment and I can start making that video. In other words, if you want a video on giving you a specific product to buy rather than teaching you guys an archetype and deciding what archetype is the best for you, just leave a comment and I can start writing the script for that. Anyways, thanks for watching.